The attention came suddenly, and for the boy, it felt louder than the city traffic he was used to. People began recognizing him on the street. Some smiled, some whispered, some pointed. He didn't fully understand what it meant to be known, only that strangers now looked at him differently. Daniel had warned him gently that the video had spread far beyond the city, that millions had watched his choices, his honesty, his quiet strength. But the boy still woke up the same way, still checked on his mother first, still picked up his fruit crate with the same care. What changed was opportunity. Daniel returned one afternoon, not in a black car this time, but walking beside the boy, like an ordinary man. He explained that a school had agreed to enroll him with full support, not because of pity, but because teachers believed the boy already carried values that couldn't be taught from books. The boy listened carefully, nodding, asking only one question. "Will I still be able to help my mother?" Daniel smiled. More than ever, his mother was improving. Proper treatment, regular meals, and rest were slowly giving her strength back. Some days she could even sit by the window and watch her son walk to school, his steps lighter now, his shoulders not carrying quite so much weight. She often cried quietly when she thought no one was looking. Not from sadness, but from gratitude mixed with disbelief. At school, the boy struggled at first. He was older than some classmates, behind in subjects, unfamiliar with routines. But he listened, he learned. He stayed late to practice reading, to solve problems he didn't understand yet. Teachers noticed something unusual. He never complained. When he failed a test, he asked how to improve. When he succeeded, he thanked those who helped him. Daniel visited occasionally, never hovering, never controlling. He wanted the boy to grow without feeling owned by a story or trapped by fame. The cameras were gone, but the consequences of the test remained. Then one day, another test came, this time without anyone planning it. A reporter found the boy outside the school gate and offered him money for an interview. More money than the boy had ever seen at once. The reporter promised fame, help, comfort. The boy looked at the envelope, then shook his head. "You should talk to my mother," he said. "And to Mr. Daniel. I don't decide alone." When Daniel heard this, he closed his eyes for a moment. The world had tried again. The answer hadn't changed. Weeks later, Daniel invited the boy and his mother to his office. It wasn't a trap. It wasn't a test. It was a conversation. "I didn't plan for this to become so big," Daniel admitted. "But since it has, I want to do something lasting." He offered to set up a small fund not in the boy's name. Not for attention, but to support children like him. Kids who worked, who cared for family, who lived honestly but invisibly. He asked the boy one simple question. "Would you help me choose who deserves it?" The boy hesitated. "I don't think I'm better than anyone." Daniel nodded. "That's exactly why I'm asking." So the boy began helping after school, visiting neighborhoods he knew well, listening to stories, pointing out families who needed help, not just with money, but with dignity. He never judged, he never spoke loudly. He just told the truth. His mother watched him grow into someone even stronger than the child she had raised in hardship. One evening, as they shared a simple meal, she reached across the table and held his hand. "You saved me," she whispered. He shook his head. "You saved me first." The city moved on, as cities always do. New stories replaced old ones. But for Daniel, for the boy, and for every life quietly touched by that first hidden camera, something permanent remained. Not fame, not money. Proof that goodness doesn't need supervision. That honesty exists even where no one is watching. That sometimes when you test the world surprises you. And the boy? He kept selling fruit some afternoons, not because he had to, but because he wanted to remember where he came from. Because character once revealed is something you protect. The secret camera had captured a moment, but the life that followed proved it wasn't an act. It was truth. The boy thought life would slow down after everything that had happened. In some ways, it did. In other ways, it became deeper, quieter, more meaningful. The attention faded, the streets returned to normal, and the camera that once tested him was now nothing more than a memory. But the lessons it revealed continued shaping every step he took. Years passed, not in a rush, but steadily. The boy grew taller, his voice changed. His fruit cart disappeared, replaced by books, notebooks, and long walks to school. His mother regained enough strength to work again, not in heavy labor, but in a small tailoring shop where her hands could rest between stitches. Every evening they sat together, sharing stories of their day, the way they always had. Only now there was laughter mixed with relief. Daniel stayed in the background, just as he promised. He never claimed credit. He never turned the boy into a symbol for marketing. He simply opened doors and stepped aside. When people asked why he helped so quietly, Daniel answered with the same words every time. Because the right people don't need to be pushed into goodness. They need space. 1 day, the boy asked Daniel something he had been holding inside for years. They were walking through a busy street, the kind he once stood on for hours selling fruit. "Why did you really test me?" he asked. "Not for the video, for yourself." Daniel stopped walking. He looked at the crowd, at the noise, at the endless movement of life. "Because I had stopped believing," he said honestly. "I thought kindness was rare. I wanted proof it still existed." The boy nodded. "And did you find it?" Daniel smiled. "I found it standing in front of me." As time moved forward, the boy became someone others looked up to, though he never noticed it himself. Younger kids followed him home, asking questions about school, about life, about how to help their families without losing themselves. He never gave speeches. He just told them what he knew. Do the right thing even. When it hurts. Especially when it hurts. When the fun Daniel created began changing lives, people wanted the boy to be its face. He refused. "Help them quietly," he said. "Let them keep their pride." That choice alone saved countless families from shame, from being turned into stories instead of humans. One evening, long after the city lights came on, the boy stood beside his mother outside their home. The same neighborhood, the same street, but it felt different now. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked gently. "The cart? The mornings?" He thought for a moment. "I don't miss the hunger, but I miss knowing exactly who I was doing it for." She squeezed his hand. "You still know." Years later, when Daniel grew older and stepped back from his work, he invited the boy, now a young man, to take his place, not as an heir, not as a successor. As a partner, the young man didn't answer right away. He visited the places he once slept on cardboard. He spoke to people who had nothing but hope. He remembered the taste of cheap fruit, the sound of coins dropping into his palm, the fear of coming home empty-handed. Then he returned and said, not because of power, because of responsibility. On the first day he officially stepped into that role, he did something no one expected. He walked outside the building, bought fruit from a small boy standing on the street, and paid double. "Why?" the boy asked. He smiled softly. "Because someone once did something like that for me." The cycle continued. Not of money, of values. His mother lived long enough to see him become everything she prayed for. When she passed peacefully, the city mourned quietly with him. At her funeral, there were no cameras, no speeches. Just people whose lives she had never known she touched. Standing together in respect, that night the young man stood alone, looking at the sky, holding on to one truth. Everything began with a choice, a simple moment, a secret camera. But what mattered wasn't the test. It was what came after. And as the city slept, another child somewhere was making a choice of their own, unaware that kindness was still watching, not through a lens, but through the hearts of those who never forgot where they started. Because true character doesn't fade when the test ends. It grows, and it changes everything. The boy woke up before the sun, the way he always did, not because he wanted to, but because life demanded it. The room was small, the walls cracked, the air heavy with the smell of last night's boiled rice. He lay still for a moment, listening to his mother's breathing. It was shallow, uneven, like every breath took effort. That sound alone was enough to pull him out of bed. He quietly folded his thin blanket, slipped on his worn sandals, and picked up the wooden crate resting near the door. Inside were apples, oranges, and a few bananas. Nothing fancy, just enough to sell for the day. He paused at the doorway and looked back at his mother. Her eyes were closed, but her face looked tired even in sleep. He whispered that he'd be back soon and stepped outside into the cool morning air. The streets were slowly waking up. Shopkeepers lifted metal shutters, buses coughed smoke into the air, and the smell of tea drifted from roadside stalls. The boy walked to his usual corner near the traffic light, the same spot he had claimed months ago. He placed the crate down, carefully arranged the fruits neatly, and waited. Hours passed. Some people ignored him completely, some glanced with pity, a few bought fruit. Every sale mattered. Every coin went into the small cloth pouch tied around his waist. He didn't count the money yet. He didn't want to hope too early. Around midday, when the sun grew harsh and the road shimmered with heat, a black car slowed down near his stall. It was clean, expensive, the kind of car he usually only saw on television through shop windows. The window rolled down, and a man inside looked at him. The man didn't look angry or kind. He looked curious. "How much for the apples?" The man asked. The boy named the price, his voice calm, respectful. The man nodded and bought two. As he handed over the money, his eyes stayed on the boy's hands, thin, slightly shaking, but steady enough. "Why aren't you in school?" the man asked casually. The boy hesitated for a fraction of a second. "I go sometimes," he said honestly. "But my mother is sick. I work when I can." The man didn't respond immediately. He simply nodded and drove away. The boy went back to calling out to passers-by, unaware that the man hadn't truly left. The car parked across the street, out of sight. Inside, a small camera mounted on the dashboard recorded everything. The man watched the boy through the screen, not as a customer now, but as an observer. An hour later, a well-dressed woman approached the fruit stand. She looked confused, almost lost. "Can you help me?" she asked. "I think I dropped my wallet." "Somewhere around here?" The boy immediately stood up. "Where were you standing?" he asked. She pointed vaguely down the street. He left his fruits unattended and walked with her, scanning the ground carefully. After a few minutes, he spotted a brown wallet near the curb. He picked it up and handed it to her without opening it. The woman checked inside, relief spreading across her face. "Everything is here," she said. "Thank you." She pulled out a large bill and tried to give it to him. The boy shook his head quickly. "No, Auntie. You don't need to give me that." "But you helped me," she insisted. "I didn't lose anything," he replied simply. "You did." She looked at him for a long moment, then smiled and walked away, leaving the bill on the ground. The boy picked it up, hesitated, then ran after her, but she was already gone. He stood there, confused, before finally putting the money into his pouch. He whispered that he'd use it for his mother's medicine. Across the street, the man in the car leaned back slightly, his expression changing. Later that afternoon, the man returned, this time stepping out of the car. He walked up to the boy, holding a small bag of groceries. "I bought too much," he said. "Can you keep this for me?" The boy looked inside the bag. Rice, lentils, cooking oil, things he recognized instantly. His eyes widened. "I can't," he said softly. "That's too much," the man shrugged. "It'll go bad if you don't." After a moment, the boy nodded and accepted it, his hands trembling slightly. "Thank you," he said. "My mom will be happy." "Why do you work so hard for her?" the man asked. The boy didn't hesitate. "Because she worked hard for me when she could barely stand." The man said nothing. He just nodded again and walked away. As evening approached, the boy counted his earnings. It wasn't much, but it was enough for food and a small dose of medicine. He packed up his fruits and began the walk home, unaware that the camera had followed him all day, capturing every choice, every word, every moment of honesty. At home, he prepared a simple meal, helped his mother sit up, and fed her slowly. She smiled at him with tired eyes, brushing his hair with weak fingers. "You didn't need to work so hard," she whispered. He smiled back. "I'm strong," he said. "I can handle it." Outside, the sun dipped below the rooftops, and somewhere across the city, the man watched the final footage on his screen. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just stared, knowing that the test he had set up had revealed more than he expected, and the boy, unaware of any test, fell asleep that night, believing he had simply survived another day. But the stranger wasn't done yet. The next morning began the same way it always did, but something in the air felt different, even if the boy couldn't explain why. He woke early, washed his face with cold water from a cracked basin, and helped his mother sit up before leaving. She looked a little better today, or maybe he just wanted to believe she did. He kissed her forehead, picked up his fruit crate, and stepped back into the city. What he didn't know was that someone had already been waiting for him. The black car was parked farther down the street this time, partially hidden behind a delivery truck. Inside, the stranger watched as the boy set up his stall, arranging the fruit with the same care as always, wiping dust from each apple with the edge of his shirt. The camera was on again, but this time the man wasn't just observing. He was planning. Mid-morning. Business was slow. The boy stood patiently, never complaining, never calling out too loudly. When an elderly man approached and counted his coins, twice before buying a single orange, the boy added an extra one without saying a word. When a street child tried to snatch a banana and run, the boy chased him only long enough to press the fruit into the child's hands and tell him to eat slowly. So his stomach wouldn't hurt. Every small moment was being recorded. Around noon, two men in cheap suits walked up to the stall. They looked annoyed, impatient. "You don't have a permit to sell here," one of them said sharply. The boy froze. "Sir, I always sell here." "No one. Today is different," the other man interrupted. "You have two options. Pay a fine or leave." The fine they mentioned was more than the boy earned in an entire week. He swallowed hard and shook his head. "I don't have that much." The first man leaned closer. "Then give us your money." "All of it." The boy's fingers tightened around the pouch at his waist. He looked at the men, then at the street around him. People were watching but not intervening. They rarely did. Slowly, he untied the pouch and held it out, but before the men could take. A firm voice cut through the noise. "Is there a problem here?" The stranger from the black car had stepped forward. The men turned, instantly adjusting their posture. "No, sir." "Just enforcing rules." The stranger raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. Because I spoke to the local office this morning." "No new rules." The men hesitated. One muttered something under his breath. Within seconds, they backed away and disappeared into the crowd. The boy stared at the stranger, shocked. "Thank you," he said quietly. The man looked at him carefully. "Why did you give them your money so easily?" The boy answered without thinking. "Arguing would waste time. I can earn again." "My mother can't wait." The stranger's jaw tightened slightly. He nodded once and walked away. Later that afternoon, a different test came. A young man in expensive clothes approached the stall, pretending to talk loudly on his phone. As he paid for fruit, he accidentally dropped a thick roll of cash near the crate. Then he walked away. The boy noticed. Immediately, "Sir," he called out, grabbing the money. He ran after the man, breathless. "You dropped this." The young man turned, acting surprised. "Oh, that? Are you sure?" "Yes," the boy said firmly. "It's yours." The man took it, stared at the boy for a long moment, then smiled oddly and walked off. Across the street, the stranger exhaled slowly. The camera captured the boy returning to his stall, adjusting the fruits again as if nothing had happened. As evening approached, the stranger finally made his move. He approached the stall one last time, but this time without pretending to be. "Just another customer. My name is Daniel," he said. "I run a company." The boy nodded politely. Titles meant little to him. "I'm sorry, sir. I don't know companies." Daniel almost smiled. "I believe that." He paused. Been watching you." The boy stiffened slightly, fear flickering in his eyes. "Did I do something wrong?" Daniel shook his head. "No, you did everything right." He explained then, carefully, gently, that he had been testing honesty in the city for a documentary, using hidden cameras to see how people behaved when they thought no one important was watching. He told the boy that every action, every choice he had made, had been recorded. The boy listened in silence, his hands slowly curling into fists. "You tricked me?" he asked quietly. Daniel's voice softened. "I tested the world. You just showed me what goodness looks like." The boy looked down. "Will I get in trouble?" "No," Daniel said firmly. I want to help you. The boy shook his head immediately. I don't want money for free, Daniel expected that. Then don't take it for free, he said. Let me help your mother. Let me help you go to school. You can still work if you want. This isn't charity, it's opportunity. The boy hesitated. He thought of his mother's coughing at night, of missed school days, of counting coins in the dark. If my mother agrees, he said finally. That night, Daniel went with him to the small room behind the bakery. He saw the peeling walls, the single mattress, the medicine bottles nearly empty. He saw the mother's eyes fill with tears as her son explained everything. She didn't trust easily, but she trusted her son. Over the next few days, everything began to change, but slowly, carefully. A doctor visited. Proper medicine arrived. The boy returned to school in the mornings and sold fruit only in the afternoons. Daniel kept his promise. No cameras now. No tests, but the footage from those 2 days went viral. People across the city watched a boy choose honesty again and again when no one forced him to. They watched him give up money, stand up quietly to fear, and protect his mother without complaint. And as the world applauded the story, the boy remained unchanged. Because to him, none of it was a test. It was just who he was, and Daniel knew. As he watched the boy walk home one evening, laughing for the first time in years, that the greatest discoveries are never made by secret cameras, but by watching the human heart when it thinks no one is watching.